You got me pregnant, human. Now you're mine for eternity. And I'll love you forever. Elias Rowan had never imagined that the day he first met Salith, the high emissary of the Aurelian Conquered, would change his life forever. As a human envoy, his job was simple in theory: communicate, negotiate, and learn. But the universe had a way of turning simplicity into chaos. Salith's people were unlike anything he had ever known. They were tall, elegant, and moved with a grace that seemed almost unnatural. Their skin shimmered faintly in light, and their eyes held depth that humans could barely understand. For the first time in his career, Elias felt small, not physically, but in the sheer weight of the alien world around him. Their meeting had been cautious at first. Humans were newcomers, weak and unpredictable in the eyes of the Aurelian Conquered. The Aurelians had lived for thousands of years, and their society was built on tradition and calculated foresight. Every word Salith spoke carried centuries of wisdom. Yet there was something curious in the way she regarded Elias. She did not see just a human diplomat. She saw potential, a spark that even she could not fully explain. Months passed with negotiation, exploration, and cultural exchange. Elias found himself learning faster than he ever had before. The Aurelians were not just intelligent, they were adaptive, precise, and patient. Elias admired them, but he also noticed subtle cracks in their perfection. Salith was not immune to human curiosity. When he asked questions that challenged their traditions, she did not dismiss him. Instead, she smiled in a way that suggested both caution and intrigue. It was during one late evening in the observation chamber of the Conquered's flagship that everything changed. Elias and Salith stood together, watching a distant star cluster, silent except for the gentle hum of the ship. Elias finally dared to speak his thoughts aloud. "Do you ever wonder," he asked, "what it would be like if humans could live as long as you? To see centuries pass, to watch entire civilizations rise and fall?" Salith's eyes softened, and for a moment she looked almost human in expression. "We have our advantages," she said quietly, "but the weight of time is heavy. We remember everything. Nothing is forgotten." "That can be difficult," Elias nodded, sensing an unspoken invitation. "I suppose humans make up for our short lives with passion," he said, a small smile forming. "We feel deeply, even if only for a moment." Her smile widened almost imperceptibly. "Perhaps that is why you are unique, Elias Rowan," he blinked. "Unique?" "Yes," she replied. "Your kind carries potential that even we cannot fully measure. You adapt in ways we cannot predict. You surprise us." At first, Elias laughed it off, thinking it was a simple compliment. But then came the news that shook him to the core. Weeks later, Salith called him to a private chamber, her expression serious. "I am expecting a child," she said, her voice calm, almost serene. Elias froze. The words made no sense at first. "Expecting? But that's impossible. Our biology is incompatible," she finished for him, and yet there was no fear in her tone. "I know, that is why this is remarkable. It is not something any Aurelian has experienced before. You should understand, Elias, this child is not an accident. It is the product of a bond that transcends our species. You are the cause." Elias' mind raced. He had read about such occurrences, theoretical ideas in xenobiology, but never thought they could happen. He felt fear, disbelief, and an odd sense of awe. The Aurelians had always treated humans as fragile, yet somehow he had changed something fundamental in their society. What does this mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It means," Salith said, "that the laws of the Conquered recognize you as bound to me. You are chosen to share in this life, in this family. There is no separation once the child is born. You will be mine, not as property, but as partner, as companion, as father." Elias wanted to protest, to argue, but he found he could not. There was no coercion in her words, only certainty. And somehow, that certainty reached into him and settled there. Over the following days, Elias learned more about what this bond meant. The Aurelians had laws old and strict that governed life, family, and duty. Among their people, such a bond was sacred and eternal. The notion of eternity was foreign to humans, but with Salith it felt natural. He could feel the weight of the choice pressing on him, and yet for the first time he realized he did not want to resist. Still, the galaxy around them was not quiet. Rumors spread quickly among the Conquered. Humans were unpredictable. They were dangerous. Some factions saw Elias as a tool, an anomaly to be studied. Others feared what the child could become, a bridge between species that should remain separate. Diplomatic channels buzzed with tension. Elias found himself at the center of something much larger than himself, a storm of curiosity, fear, and hope. Salith remained calm, her presence a constant anchor. She guided him through the complexities of Aurelian society, showing him both the beauty and the danger of their world. She explained the politics, the rituals, the weight of history that rested on her shoulders. One evening, as they walked through the luminescent gardens of the conquered flagship, Elias finally voiced what he had been feeling. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Not just for myself, but for everything. For the child, for you, for Earth. I don't know if I'm ready for this." Salith reached out, placing a hand gently on his arm. "Fear is natural, Elias. Even we, with all our centuries, feel it. But you are not alone. We will face it together. And remember, humans have a gift that even we cannot replicate, hope and the courage to act on it." The next days were filled with preparation. Scientists, diplomats, and philosophers from both species examined the implications of the bond. They debated, theorized, and sometimes argued fiercely. Yet in every discussion it became clear that Elias' humanity was not a weakness, it was a strength. His adaptability, his emotions, his ability to think differently were exactly what made this miracle possible. Elias began to see himself differently. He was no longer just a diplomat. He was a bridge, a living example of what humans could offer to the universe. And though fear still lingered, it was accompanied by a growing sense of pride and purpose. The final night before the formal declaration of the eternal bond, Elias and Salith stood together once more in the observation chamber. Stars stretched endlessly before them, silent witnesses to the change about to unfold. "You are sure?" Elias asked. "Once this is official, there is no turning back. The conquered will recognize it, and the laws of your people will make it permanent." Salith's gaze met his, steady and unwavering. "I am sure, and you are free to choose. But I hope, Elias Rowan, that you will choose with your heart." He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of centuries press lightly on his shoulders. "I choose," he said finally, "not because I have to, but because I want to." Salith's eyes glimmered, and for the first time Elias felt the full depth of the bond forming between them. It was not about possession or obligation or duty. It was about trust, courage, and the willingness to face the unknown together. As dawn approached, the conquered convened. Salith publicly invoked the Eternal Bond Clause, formally declaring Elias Rowan as her chosen partner and the father of a child that would bridge two species. Across the galaxy, observers gasped. Humans had not only survived first contact, they had reshaped centuries of tradition with a single, simple act, choosing love and hope over fear. Elias stood beside Salith, watching as the murmurs of doubt and surprise spread through the assembly. He realized that life as he had known it was over, but it was not an ending, it was a beginning. Humanity, fragile yet unyielding, had taken its place among the stars in a way no one had expected. And in that moment, as Salith gently touched his hand, Elias felt something stir deep within him, a sense of wonder, of pride, and of belonging. He did not yet know what challenges lay ahead or how the galaxy would respond to the miracle they had created. But he knew one thing for certain: whatever came next, he would face it not alone, but with Salith and with the life growing between them. For the first time in his life, Elias Rowan understood what it meant to be truly human, not just to survive, not just to explore, but to hope, to love, and to endure. Elias Rowan had stepped into a world far larger and stranger than he could have ever imagined. The eternal bond with Salith was now official, recognized by the entire Aurelian conquered. He was no longer just a human envoy. He was something new, a bridge between species, a father-to-be of a child that could change the galaxy. Yet, even with this honor, uncertainty weighed heavily on him. Humanity had never faced a universe like this before, and he knew that challenges were only beginning. Salith guided him through the complex traditions of Aurelian society. Their life together was full of learning, ceremony, and preparation. Every day, Elias discovered new customs, new ways of thinking, and new truths about the universe. He marveled at the Aurelians' elegance, but more than that, he appreciated their wisdom and patience. For every rigid rule, there was a reason born from centuries of experience. Yet the more Elias learned, the more he realized the galaxy was not ready for the miracle he and Salith had created. Some factions whispered that the child should not exist, that humans were too unpredictable to carry such responsibility. Others saw potential, a way to unite species that had once been enemies. Politics became a constant, subtle storm surrounding Ilias. Every decision he made was scrutinized, every word measured for its impact across light years of diplomacy. Despite this, there were moments of peace. One evening, Salith brought him to the Concord's gardens, a place where the glowing flora reflected light in delicate waves. The air was calm, filled with scents that no human could name. She turned to him, her expression both serious and tender. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "what it will be like when our child is born, how different it will be to raise a life that carries both our histories?" Ilias thought for a long moment. "I do," he said finally. "I'm not afraid of the responsibility, I'm afraid of failing, of not being enough." Salith reached out and placed her hand on his. "You are already more than enough, Ilias. Humans adapt, you survive, you care. That is something no other species in the galaxy can do the way you do." Her words warmed him. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine the future, a life shared with Salith, guiding their child and shaping a world that embraced humanity's unexpected gifts. Weeks passed, and the pregnancy became a symbol of hope and change. Ilias began to see how humans were perceived differently by the Aurelians. What had once been seen as a fragile, weak species was now viewed with respect. Humans had shown courage, intelligence, and adaptability. They had changed galactic law without lifting a weapon, without coercion, simply by being human. Yet not all reactions were positive. Certain factions within the Concord remained suspicious. Some argued that humans should not have such influence, that the bond might disrupt the delicate balance of power. They watched Ilias closely, measuring his every action, waiting for mistakes. Ilias found these tensions difficult to ignore. He had learned to navigate diplomacy, but this was different. It was personal. The child in Salith's womb was more than a future. It was a challenge to centuries of tradition. It was also a test of his courage, resilience, and humanity. One day, as they prepared for another public ceremony, Salith spoke to him privately. "Ilias, there are those who wish to see us fail. They believe this bond is unnatural. We must show them that love and courage are not weaknesses, that being human is a strength." Ilias nodded. He felt the weight of her words, but he also felt a quiet confidence. Together, they were stronger than the sum of their parts. Humanity's resilience and the Aurelians' wisdom combined in a way no one could predict. The birth of the child was still months away, but preparations were underway. Scientists studied ways to ensure the child's health. Diplomats negotiated how the family would be protected, and philosophers debated the implications of a being that might unite two species. Ilias listened to them all, absorbing knowledge, asking questions, and offering ideas. He realized that humans had a way of thinking that complemented Aurelian experience. Where they planned for centuries, humans acted decisively in moments of crisis. That combination was dangerous and remarkable. During one quiet night in the observation chamber, Ilias finally spoke of his fears. "Salith, what if we are not ready for this? What if the child grows up in a world that does not accept them? What if I fail as a father?" Salith smiled gently. "Ilias, every life faces uncertainty. Every parent fears for their child. But you do not face it alone, we face it together. And you are not failing, you are learning. That is the human way." Her words brought him comfort. He realized that being human was not about perfection. It was about trying, caring, and never giving up, even when the universe seemed vast and indifferent. As the weeks continued, political tensions grew. Some Aurelian factions threatened to remove Ilias from the Concord entirely, claiming humans were too unpredictable. But Salith defended him fiercely. She invoked the eternal bond clause repeatedly, making it clear that the human had a right to stand beside her and raise their child. The confrontation came during a public assembly, where delegates from across the galaxy gathered to witness the ongoing negotiation. A powerful faction leader stood and demanded that Ilias be removed for the safety of the child and the Concord. The chamber fell silent. Ilias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every eye upon him. He stepped forward, his voice steady. "I am human," he said. "We are capable of mistakes, yes, but we are also capable of courage, loyalty, and love. I will protect this child. I will honor the bond with Salith, and I will prove that humanity belongs here not as weak newcomers, but as equals capable of shaping the future." A murmur ran through the assembly. Salith stood by his side, her hand resting lightly on his arm, showing unity and trust. The leader hesitated, then slowly nodded. The challenge was not erased, but Elias had shown that humans would not be ignored or dismissed. Time passed, and the bond between Elias and Salith grew stronger. They learned each other's ways, adapted to each other's needs, and found joy in small moments. Sharing meals under glowing gardens, watching distant stars, and speaking in quiet tones about the future. The pregnancy became a symbol not just of life, but of possibility. Finally, the day arrived when the child was born. It was a quiet, momentous event. Scientists and diplomats observed respectfully, but Elias and Salith were the center. The child was healthy, their eyes holding a depth that reflected both human curiosity and Aurelian wisdom. It was a living bridge between worlds, proof that two species could create something new together. Elias held the child for the first time. A quiet sense of awe filled him. This tiny life represented not just hope for the conquered, but hope for humanity. He realized that humans had a role in the galaxy far beyond exploration. They could unite, inspire, and endure. Salith watched him, her expression soft and proud. "You have done well, Elias," she said. "Not because of laws or rules, but because of your heart. That is what makes you human." Elias smiled, feeling a peace he had never known. The challenges were not over. Politics would continue, threats would arise, and life would be unpredictable. But he understood something important. Humans could face any challenge with courage, love, and determination. Together, they left the chamber, stepping into a galaxy that had already begun to change. Where once humans had been seen as fragile and short-lived, they were now respected as resilient and capable. The child slept peacefully in Elia's arms, a symbol of unity, hope, and the enduring strength of humanity. As they walked through the glowing gardens, Elias thought about the future. Centuries might pass, worlds might rise and fall, and civilizations might change. But this bond between him, Salith, and their child would endure. Humanity had shown that it could face the stars with courage and heart, and that love, above all, could shape destinies. Elias Rowan had stepped into eternity not as a victim of circumstance, but as a human who had chosen to embrace it. And with Salith by his side, he knew they would face whatever came together. Humanity was no longer just surviving among the stars. Humanity was shaping them. Years had passed since the birth of Elias and Salith's child. The little one, named Kaelin, had grown quickly, showing signs of the rare combination of human curiosity and Aurelian wisdom. From the beginning, it was clear that Kaelin was unique, not just in appearance but in mind and spirit. He could sense emotions across distances, understand concepts beyond his age, and connect with creatures both human and alien. Elias watched Kaelin with awe. The boy was a living bridge between two civilizations, proof that humans could do more than survive. They could thrive and inspire. Yet with such a child came challenges. There were still those in the conquered who viewed him with suspicion, worried that his abilities could disrupt centuries of order. Elias knew that protecting Kaelin would require more than strength. It would require wisdom, diplomacy, and courage. Salith remained a constant partner, guiding both Elias and Kaelin with patience and insight. She had taught Kaelin to respect both his human and Aurelian heritage, showing him that identity was not a chain but a choice. Together, they navigated the complexities of raising a child whose existence was revolutionary. One morning, as the three walked through the luminous gardens of the conquered flagship, Kaelin stopped suddenly, looking up at the stars. "Father," he said, "I feel something." Far away, someone is in trouble. Elias felt a chill. Kaelin's abilities had always been subtle, more like intuition, but this was different, urgent, undeniable. "Show me," he said, kneeling beside his son. Kaelin closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, sensing the distress in a far-off star system. The message was clear. A colony on a distant planet was in danger. A sudden environmental collapse had trapped thousands of humans and Aurelians alike. Communications had failed and help might not arrive in time. Elia's heart pounded. This was the kind of challenge he had been preparing for all his life. Humans had always faced the unknown, but now the stakes were higher than ever. Salith placed a hand on his shoulder. "We cannot ignore this," she said. "We have the knowledge, the technology, and the courage to help. Humanity and the conquered together can make a difference." Without hesitation, Elias activated the ship's emergency protocols. The Conquered's fleet had grown accustomed to human ingenuity, and while some doubted his methods, many followed his lead without question. They plotted a course to the planet, ready to face whatever awaited them. During the journey, Elias reflected on the nature of humanity. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy, nor the most intelligent. Yet they had something unique: adaptability, courage, and the willingness to act when others hesitated. Salith watched him quietly, knowing that his quiet determination was as vital to the mission as the fleet itself. As they arrived at the planet, the scene was chaotic. Storms raged, buildings collapsed, and the ground itself seemed unstable. Yet the humans and Aurelians on the planet were still alive, trapped but fighting to survive. Elias organized rescue teams, combining human improvisation with Aurelian technology. Kalen, despite his youth, took part as well. His empathic abilities allowed him to locate survivors and guide teams to safety. Elias marveled at the boy's courage. Even at a young age, Kalen understood that being human or Aurelian was not about being invincible. It was about making choices, helping others, and acting with heart. Hours passed in a blur of rescue operations. Teams worked tirelessly, moving debris, stabilizing structures, and calming the terrified survivors. Elias coordinated, Salith guided strategy, and Kalen helped where he could. Despite the dangers, there was a sense of purpose, a quiet determination that bound them all together. Finally, as the storms began to subside, the last survivors were brought to safety. Exhausted but unharmed, they looked to Elias, Salith, and Kalen with gratitude. For the first time, many of them realized that humans were more than fragile newcomers. Humans could lead, protect, and inspire. That night back aboard the flagship, Elias sat quietly in the observation chamber, Kalen asleep beside him. Salith joined him, her presence calm and reassuring. "You see," she said softly, "this is what humanity can do. You are not just capable of survival. You are capable of changing the galaxy." Elias smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride. "I never thought we could do something like this," he admitted. "All my life, I've wondered if humans could really make a difference among the stars. Now I know we can." Salith rested her head against his shoulder. "And you are not alone. Look at your son. He carries both our worlds in him. He is proof that love, courage, and hope can shape destiny." Kalen stirred in his sleep, muttering softly. Elias watched him, imagining the future. The galaxy would continue to challenge them, but he felt ready. Humans had faced uncertainty before and had survived. Now they were not just surviving, they were shaping the course of civilizations. In the weeks that followed, the story of the rescue spread across the conquered and back to human colonies. Elias and Salith became symbols of cooperation, unity, and courage. Their family represented the best of both species, and Kalen's abilities were celebrated as a sign of hope for the future. Yet challenges remained. Some factions still doubted humans, some still feared the power of Kalen. But Elias had learned an important lesson. Fear could not dictate action. Courage, empathy, and wisdom could. Humans had a way of facing impossible odds not because they were strongest, but because they refused to give up. One evening, Elias and Salith sat with Kalen in the gardens, watching the stars shimmer above them. The boy looked up, his eyes reflecting the light. "Father," he said, "I want to explore. I want to see other planets, other species. I want to help everyone I can." Elias smiled, realizing that his son had inherited humanity's greatest traits: curiosity, courage, and compassion. "We will, Kalen," he said, "and you will lead, as humans always do, by example, by heart, and by hope." Salith placed a hand on Elias' shoulder. "You have done more than survive," she said. "You have inspired. You have changed the way the galaxy sees your kind. That is what it means to be human." Elias looked at Kalen, then at Salith, and felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The journey was far from over, and the universe still held mysteries, dangers, and wonders beyond imagination. But together, they were ready. Humanity was no longer just a visitor among the stars. Humanity was a force for hope, for courage, and for connection. As the three of them walked through the glowing gardens, Elias understood something important. Life in the galaxy was unpredictable, full of challenges and threats. But it was also full of possibilities. Humans had faced the unknown before, and they would continue to do so. They were adaptable, resilient, and capable of love in ways no one could predict. And in that knowledge, Elias felt peace. He had chosen this path, embraced the bond with Salith, and raised a child who would carry both their legacies. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and he had not faltered. Humanity had not only survived, it had thrived. Kalen yawned and snuggled closer to Elias, his small hand reaching for his father's. Elias held him gently, feeling the strength of family, of love, and of hope. Salith joined them, completing the circle. In that moment, the galaxy seemed vast, yet full of promise. Together, they could face anything. The stars outside shone brightly, silent witnesses to a new chapter in history. Humans had proven that courage, compassion, and resilience were more powerful than fear. They had shaped the future not with weapons, but with heart. Elias Rowan understood more clearly than ever what it meant to be human, to explore, to endure, to love, and to change the universe. In the years to come, Elias, Salith, and Kalen would face challenges, encounter new civilizations, and witness wonders beyond imagination. But one truth would remain constant. Humanity had a place among the stars, not as spectators, but as shapers, dreamers, and guardians. And with every step forward, they would continue to prove it. One choice, one act of courage, and one bond of love at a time. Years passed, and Kalen grew into a young teenager, already showing remarkable abilities that bridged human and Aurelian traits. His empathic senses had become stronger, allowing him to communicate silently with both humans and Aurelians, understanding emotions and intentions in a way that seemed almost magical. Yet, Elias and Salith knew that power came with responsibility. They had to guide him carefully, helping him learn restraint, empathy, and wisdom. Elias often reflected on how far they had come. What had begun as a miracle, an impossible bond between human and Aurelian, had become a foundation for hope across the galaxy. Humans were no longer seen as fragile newcomers. They were respected, even admired. Yet Elias understood that the galaxy was unpredictable, and with every step forward, new challenges would arise. One day, a distress signal reached the Conquered. A previously uncharted planet, deep in a remote system, had been discovered to harbor a civilization unlike any known before. They had no advanced technology, but their society was complex, with strong emotions and cultural depth. The planet was in danger, its ecosystem was failing rapidly, and its inhabitants were unaware of the approaching collapse. Elias, Salith, and Kalen were chosen to lead the mission. The task was delicate. The humans could not interfere recklessly, but they had the chance to save a civilization and prove humanity's adaptability and compassion once again. Kalen, eager and curious, asked to join. "You must be careful," Elias warned him gently. "Your abilities are strong, but so are your emotions. The people of that planet are fragile. You must guide them, not force them." "I understand, Father," Kalen replied. "I want to help. I want to do what's right." Their journey through deep space was quiet yet tense. The conquered fleet had grown accustomed to human ingenuity, but missions like this were rare. Elias spent time with Kalen, teaching him about patience, diplomacy, and understanding. Salith provided guidance, blending centuries of wisdom with compassion. Together, they formed a team that balanced knowledge, courage, and heart. Upon arrival, the planet revealed its fragility. Vast storms swept across its surface, and once thriving forests were dying. The inhabitants were intelligent but lacked technology to address the crisis. The situation demanded careful action. Elias led with calm authority. He coordinated teams to stabilize critical areas, using a combination of human improvisation and Aurelian technology. Kalen focused on the inhabitants, reaching out with his empathic senses to calm panic and guide them to safety. The people were wary at first, frightened by the strangers in their skies, but Kalen's gentle presence bridged the gap. He understood their fears and communicated reassurance without words. Slowly, trust grew. Over days of work, Elias marveled at Kalen's growth. The boy had learned to temper his natural curiosity with caution. He was no longer a child who reacted first and thought later. He could analyze, plan, and guide with a calm focus that belied his age. It was a testament to humanity's ability to adapt, learn, and thrive in circumstances no one could predict. Salith observed Elias and Kalen with pride. Their family had become a symbol of hope. Humanity had faced the unknown before, but now they were not just surviving. They were leading, teaching, and inspiring. As the crisis began to stabilize, Elias noticed a troubling pattern. The planet's ecosystem was deteriorating faster than expected. Something beneath the surface, a previously unknown energy source, was disrupting life itself. Human and Aurelian technology combined could not stop it without careful strategy. Kalen closed his eyes, sensing the planet's pulse. He understood the danger instinctively. "Father," he said, "it is coming from beneath. We must act carefully. One wrong step could make it worse." Elias nodded. "Then we proceed with caution together." They devised a plan. Kalen would guide teams through empathic insight, Elias would coordinate actions, and Salith would oversee the fleet and ensure safety. The plan required precision, trust, and courage, all qualities that humans had honed over millennia. The operation was tense. The planet's unstable terrain shifted unpredictably, storms raged, and the inhabitants were frightened. Yet Kalen remained calm, leading by example. His presence reassured both the people and the rescue teams. Elias felt a surge of pride. Humanity's strength was not in technology alone, but in the ability to face fear with courage, to act with wisdom, and to inspire others. After hours of careful maneuvering, the source of disruption was stabilized. The planet's ecosystem began to recover slowly, and the inhabitants learned to adapt with guidance from Kalen, Elias, and Salith. What had started as a crisis became a success story, a civilization saved by the combined efforts of humans and Aurelians, guided by the courage and empathy of one extraordinary family. That night, as the family rested in the observation chamber, Elias reflected on the mission. Humanity had once been confined to a small, fragile world. Now humans were changing the galaxy, not through force, but through adaptability, courage, and compassion. Kalen, even as a young teenager, was a living symbol of that legacy. "You see," Salith said softly, "humans are not fragile. They are remarkable. They take what they have and make it more than anyone expects. That is why you, Elias, have made such a difference. And that is why Kalen will continue to change the galaxy in ways we cannot yet imagine." Elias smiled, holding Kalen close. "I see it now," he admitted. "Humans have always survived, but now we are thriving. Not because we are the strongest, but because we care, we act, and we endure. We shape our own destiny, one choice at a time." Kalen stirred in his sleep, murmuring softly. Elias understood that the boy was already aware of his role. Kalen had felt the weight of responsibility and had chosen courage. Humanity had passed that strength to him, and now he would carry it forward. The days that followed were filled with teaching and exploration. Kalen learned to use his empathic abilities with care, to analyze situations with logic, and to act with courage. Elias and Salith guided him, balancing freedom and discipline, allowing the boy to grow into a leader who would inspire generations. Word of their success spread across the conquered. Humans were no longer seen as unpredictable outsiders. They were respected, even revered, for their ability to act decisively and wisely in moments of crisis. Elias had become more than a diplomat. He was a symbol of human potential, a living example of what humanity could achieve when faced with the unknown. Yet, Elias remained humble. He knew that humanity's strength lay not in accolades, but in action. They had faced challenges, adapted, and persevered. They had chosen to act with courage and heart, and that was what made them extraordinary. One evening, as the family walked through the glowing gardens, Kalen looked up at the stars and asked, "Father, will humans always be able to make a difference?" Elias paused, considering his words. "Yes, Kalen, but it is not because we are the strongest or the fastest. It is because we care. We see what needs to be done and we do it. We face fear, uncertainty, and danger, and we choose to act anyway. That is what makes us human." Salith smiled, her hand resting on Elias' shoulder. "And with that courage, humanity will continue to shape the galaxy. You, Elias, and Kalen will be remembered, not for power, but for heart. That is our true legacy." Kalen's eyes shone with determination. He understood that the universe was vast, full of challenges and unknowns. Yet he felt confident because he had learned from humans, who had always faced the impossible and endured. He would continue that legacy, guiding others, teaching courage, and showing that compassion and determination could shape civilizations. Elias looked at his family, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been long and difficult, but humanity had proven itself. They had not only survived first contact, they had inspired, led, and endured. They had shown that courage, empathy, and action mattered more than strength or technology alone. The stars outside shimmered, silent witnesses to a new era. Humans were no longer just observers in the galaxy. They were participants, leaders, and guardians. And with Kalen growing into his role, guided by Elias and Salith, the future looked bright and full of possibility. As they stood together in the gardens, Elias understood something profound. Life in the galaxy would always hold challenges. Threats, mysteries, and dangers were inevitable, but humans, with their courage, adaptability, and heart, would face them. And humanity would endure, shaping the universe in ways no one could predict. The galaxy had changed. Humans had changed it. And together, Elias, Salith, and Kalen would continue to prove that the smallest, most fragile species could leave the largest mark. They were not just survivors. They were pioneers, dreamers, and guardians. And as long as they chose courage, compassion, and action, humanity would always thrive among the stars.